Hey everyone, today's video is going to be a discussion kind of video on Cinder and Scarlet by Marissa Meyer. And these are the first two books in the Lunar Chronicle series. This video is going to be more of a spoiler discussion. I really just wanted to talk about my overall thoughts on this series and talk about things that went on and just kind of fangirl over how much I am loving this series. If you haven't read both Cinder and Scarlet, I would say click out of this video. The only non-spoiler thing I'll really say is that you should definitely read this series if you haven't yet. So far I think this series deserves the hype. I've only read the first two books, but I have thoroughly enjoyed them. I gave them both a 4.5 out of 5 stars. I just thought they were great. It's kind of a fantasy slash sci-fi story that's inspired by different fairy tales. Obviously the first one is Cinderella and this one is Red Riding Hood, but they're not exactly like retellings of those stories. You can see that parts of the books are inspired by those original stories. But yeah, so far I highly recommend this series. So let's get into spoilers. If you haven't read the books, you need to click out and come back whenever you have read them. So let's talk about Cinder first. I had high expectations going into it because of all the hype that it had, but I went into it knowing I was already gonna love it. Like, just from hearing everyone talk about it, just from hearing what the books are about, I was like, I'm gonna love this series. I just know it. And I did love it, but I was also surprised. I was surprised by how science fiction it is. I thought it was gonna be a little more fantasy, but I loved all of the science that was included in Cinder, and I think that's why I really loved it, especially with the whole virus thing and, you know, the doctors looking for the cure to the virus and all of that. I thought that was so interesting. I just loved the world. It was so unique and I could just totally picture it. I thought the writing was just fantastic. I loved that it was like a futuristic kind of grungy Beijing, and I just loved Cinder. I loved how she was so strong, and although she was like self-conscious about a lot of things, she like stood up for herself, especially to her stepmother, that if her stepmother got like crazy with her, she was like, no, I'm not doing that, or you're being crazy, or, you know, I love that she stood up to her stepmother and didn't just go like cower in her room. I love that she's so smart with the mechanics and everything. I just really connected to Cinder and enjoyed her character. Also really loved her little android Aiko, I believe is how you say it. She was so funny and such a great addition to the story, and I was really sad whenever she kind of went out of the picture. And I also really loved Prince Kai and loved his and Cinder's relationship kind of drama. Throughout the whole thing, I was like so rooting for him and Cinder, how he kept fighting for her, you know. But I got aggravated though because like I kept wanting her to tell him that she was cyborg. Just knew that he wouldn't really freak out so much about the cyborg thing. So I was like, just tell him, but she never did, so that was kind of aggravating. But anyway, I did think the story was pretty predictable. I thought it was so obvious that Cinder was like the long lost niece of Queen Lavanna. I thought that was so obvious, and that Cinder was lunar and all of that. So I wasn't really surprised by that, but I was very interested in how Cinder controlled her powers. She was kind of like affected by Queen Lavanna, but she could kind of fight it, and I thought that was really cool. I want to talk about like the ending scene of Cinder. Like, what, that was so scary. I was like freaking out the entire time when Cinder like went to the ball and then they found out that she was lunar, and that whole craziness, that was so like heart pounding. Like, I was freaking out, which I listened to majority of this book on audiobook, so for me it felt even more intense, and I loved the audiobook. I loved the narrator. I thought she did such a great job, especially with all of the different voices. But the ending scene of Cinder was crazy. Couldn't wait to start Scarlet, so let's go ahead and talk about Scarlet. I literally cannot decide if I liked Scarlet more than Cinder. I loved them equally. I can't choose which one I liked more. I feel like they are pretty different. Of course, in Scarlet we're following kind of a different main character, learning more about her and what's going on in her life and everything, but we do see more of Cinder and Cinder's story as well. So I liked that it's kind of companion novels, but the storyline from the first book does continue on into the second book, and you see all of the characters too. It's a pretty unique series in that way. Scarlet was a little bit darker than Cinder, with all of like the wolf creatures and everything, and that was pretty scary, especially at the end with Scarlet's grandma and all of that. I just really wanted to see more of Cinder and Prince Kai, but we didn't get that in Scarlet because Cinder and Prince Kai were separated. But I was so glad that she was able to put Aiko into this ship, and that was just so funny. Aiko is so cute, and I love all the little things and her little quotes that she says. And then we also get to meet Thorn, who was, again, such a wonderful addition to the story. So funny, and I just loved the part that he played. All of the characters in this series are just fantastic. I really did enjoy Scarlet's character. She did aggravate me sometimes because I felt like she was a little bit impulsive and all of that, but overall, I liked her. I liked how driven she was to find her grandmother, but that scene where she did find her grandmother, like where she was able to get out, she found her grandmother in her horrible condition and everything, and her grandmother like was dying, I was just like, Scarlet, you need to get out of there. Someone is going to find you. Your grandmother is, you know, gone. Just tell her you love her, say your goodbyes, and go. Lingering in that situation for way too long. Get out of there. Something bad's gonna happen. And of course, something bad did happen. Let's talk about Wolf and Scarlet. I was definitely rooting for Wolf. I really, you know, of course, liked his character when he was first introduced. He was very mysterious and interesting. But then we found out that he was actually lunar and that he was part of that whole gang of creatures and everything. That was kind of weird, and that did surprise me. But I'm not 100% sold on the romance between Scarlet and Wolf by the end of Scarlet. It's a little weird because she went from being very interested in Wolf, really liking him, trusting him, to absolutely hating him when finding out who he actually was. And then he like kind of saved her and escaped with her, and then she was all lovey-dovey, love him again. And I just felt like that was too quick, like transition of emotion back into I love you. I just thought that happened too quickly. It's not that I don't want them to be together. I like them together, and I am happy that he is like on the good side now and everything. But that kind of like roller coaster of emotions didn't totally work for me when it came to the romance between them. But I do like them, and I am interested to see what happens with that in the future books. The ending of Scarlet was just so exciting that everyone was finally together, and that Cinder is finally accepting her fate, accepting who she is, and she is going to fight Queen Lavanna. Please do not spoil Cress and Winter for me in the comments. I am going to be reading them hopefully very soon, so please do not spoil them for me. But I just loved how Scarlet ended. It just left me super pumped for the next books. And I know she's gonna go find the girl from the video with programmed the chip, so I'm pretty sure that girl is going to be Cress. I can't wait to hear her story. I just can't wait to see Cinder and Prince Kai together again. Really holding out for that. I think that might be all I have to say about these books. I did also listen to Scarlet on audiobook, and it was great, so I'm gonna continue listening to the series on audiobook and also kind of reading along a little bit. But I'm just in love with the audiobooks. They're so good. But yeah, if you have anything to add to this discussion, or you want to talk about things that happened in Cinder and Scarlet, please leave them in the comments below. I would love to discuss them with you. But thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you next time. Bye!